Hi, my name's Jonathon. Currently I co-chair the Public and Patient Involvement Group that works with the Sea Change project to help ensure that the patient and carer voice is heard and acted upon throughout the life of this hugely important research programme. In early 2014, at the very first PPI meeting that we had, we asked one of the most important questions that has ever come out of our PPI groups, and that is, how do we know that what we're measuring in this programme are the things that really matter to patients and carers? We knew at the time that we had some fantastic measures, such as IPOS and many others. But as people, when we are supporting others to die or facing death itself, we tend to have much wider needs than just clinical needs, what Sue, one of the PPI group members, called holistic needs. Now, since that first meeting, we've developed a much larger and more representative group of patient and carer volunteers who in turn have helped us explore some of the richer, more diverse needs of the dying. And repeatedly in those meetings, as stories have been told about the death of loved ones and the huge challenges carers face in coordinating and managing their loved ones' care, one aspect of the experience has repeatedly come to the fore, and that is the emotional burden that it can place on patients and carers. I remember in my own case, when I was regaining consciousness on the ward, after weeks in intensive care, I was quite literally hovering between life and death. Now, what I remember of that period was that I received outstanding clinical care. The kidney machine, the ventilator, the drips, the blood pressure monitors, the ECG machines were all monitored and tended to all the time. But what I remember most as a person from that time, conscious yet paralysed, barely able to breathe, unable to move, to eat or to speak, was the desperate loneliness of those weeks. I just wanted to be touched or talked to, but nobody seemed to understand. I just wanted someone to take an interest in me, to reassure me. I had no idea how I got into hospital, how sick I was, whether I would ever recover. And nobody seemed to notice my need for emotional support. So my ask is, how are we going to measure the emotional distress of patients and carers alike? How do we measure this when someone may not be fully conscious, for example, in the case of a severe trauma or dementia? And how can we reach out and offer appropriate emotional support? How are we going to measure and meet the more holistic needs of patients and carers? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ping Guo. I'm the Sea Change Project Manager. I would like to thank Jonathon and our Patient and Public Involvement Group for helping to identify the most important concerns which really matter to both patients and families. We are very grateful to Jonathon for sharing his very personal experience with us and raising these key issues. Emotional burden or distress covers many different kinds of feelings. It might be a deep and lasting sense of fear or depression. It might be anger or suffering, anxiety, or a sense of being unbearably alone or powerless. Each person is different, so one person's emotional distress or burden will be different to the others. So, to answer Jonathon's first question about how we are going to measure emotional distress of patients and carers, in the next phase of the Sea Change project, we decided to include an additional measure called the distress thermometer, which is a tested method to assess emotional distress. In our study, the distress thermometer will now be completed by the patient participants and their family carers to better understand emotional distress of both patients and carers. In response to the second question, how do we measure emotional distress when someone may not be fully conscious? We appreciate in this instance someone cannot tell us about their distress readily. So, we have asked both families and staff to report on whether someone is peaceful or settled or not. Thirdly, how can we reach out for appropriate emotional support? This is a very good question. This study is not intended to deliver the interventions, in this case, the emotional support, but to help better recognize these problems and concerns so that resources can be put in place to address these issues. But we will work very hard to ensure that once emotional needs are recognized, they are then addressed. Finally, how are we going to measure more holistic needs? For example, the physical, psychological, social, and spiritual needs of patients and carers. There are a number of tools that we can use to assess holistic needs. These include, but are by no means restricted to the distress thermometer and the integrated palliative care outcome scale, both of which we are using in the study. However, an assessment tool is only one way of capturing holistic needs and should not become a tick box exercise, nor should health professionals become a slave to the tool rather than focusing on the person and the family. The C-Change project will provide information about the holistic needs of patients and carers, help to identify unmet needs and where improvements are most needed in the care pathway. Thank you.